Hi guys, a massive 8.1 magnitude earthquake is expected to hit New Zealand. Um, no actual proper timeline on that, but they're saying that the Alpine Fault, which runs 500 kilometers up the western side of the South Island, is overdue for a big shake that could block highways and leave thousands cut off, according to new research. What stood out to me is obviously the number of people, 10,000, and I've connected that number to the TFL, to Syria's Idlib, um, and to a potential chemical attack in that scenario, in both scenarios, in terms of London and in Syria. They've both been related to chemical weapons usage and 10,000 people being affected by it, possibly dying or becoming very unwell. But with the reference to New Zealand, it kind of made me think about the Africa video again. And when I was looking at this part of the video, this part especially over here with the Z, which is kind of slightly tilted, which could also be an N if you turn it 45 degrees. And then you've got the O, which is tilted as well. If you take those three letters, N, Z, and O, it does correspond to New Zealand quite effectively. New Zealand, country in Oceania. So I was thinking about that, and then I noticed the other N, and I was thinking maybe that could also be a representation of New Zealand with the N one way and the Z the other way. But I've already surmised that this could be an R, which is the 18th letter of the alphabet, which could stand for the year, but could also stand for the 18th of an actual month, which could be September. On the 18th of September, we're going to have Hurricane Helen. So Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Helen, and Hurricane Isaac, the three hurricanes that are currently churning in the Atlantic at the moment. I don't know if that's what it means, but it just seems um, like this is the biggest one, Florence, and it's heading towards the east coast, which is kind of where it's going. This one is not so big, a Category 1, Helen, which is heading this way up towards the UK. And then you've got Hurricane Isaac, which is about Category 1 as well, so not much bigger than this one, roughly around the same size, moving towards the Caribbean and Puerto Rico. So three different sized hearts, kind of corresponding to the three different sized hurricanes that we've got going on in the Atlantic at the moment. Where, as I said, Hurricane Helen is going to be approaching the United Kingdom around the 18th. So I suspect from this here, the line down and the L, when it's turned another way, I already pointed out that could connect to 17. So it's possible that on the 17th there's an attack on the London Transport Network or something associated with uh, Transport for London. And then the next day we'll get Hurricane Helen. It's kind of similar situation with the East Coast. You've got Hurricane Florence moving in at the same time. You could have nuclear reactor meltdown, a blackout, and a tsunami, possibly an earthquake as well. Or it could be that the earthquake is just going on at the same time. So where we've got this 8.1 that New Zealand is overdue for, and we have the Z, which could be an N, and we have the O, and that all corresponds to New Zealand and Oceania. Not saying that that's what they mean, but it is a possible interpretation. Uh, Maybe that's something we have to look out for. I can't exactly tell when or if that earthquake is going to happen, but if it is part of this timeline of events that seems to be happening from, well, kind of started from like September the 11th with the opening ceremony, um, which was yesterday, and moving forward, I've got references to the 12th, the 13th, the 14th, the 15th. Haven't found anything for the 16th, but the 17th and the 18th most definitely. 21, 22, and 23 could be also included, obviously, with the Apple split, the V on Obama's forehead, and the Psalm 23. There's multiple layers of meaning. So videos I made yesterday, we've got the 22 could relate to 22 inches of rain connected to the Hawaiian volcano, but not 22 inches of rain there, 22 inches of rain with Florence, but kind of like a layered meaning. So while 22 inches of rain is falling from Hurricane Florence, an eruption is going to occur over at Kilauea. That's at least what I'm gathering from the information that I'm interpreting. Sorry to just keep it on one screen. I usually just, when I start talking, just forget to move things around. Um, but that seems to be where we're going. So not only could this be an R, which could represent 18, you've got 1 and it could be a 2, which represents number 12. Mirrored, it could be 1 and 5, which represents number 15. See, the 12th is Hawaii. So maybe some other things are going to happen on today as well. Um, Looking out for an earthquake associated with New Zealand. Obviously, that earthquake 8.1 would generate a tsunami, which would propagate out towards the Pacific, and obviously Hawaii is in the Pacific, the West Coast is in the Pacific. It could be a chain of events like that, an earthquake in New Zealand, followed by a tsunami, which affects Hawaii, which then erupts massively and affects the West Coast. And then we move over, and that's all kind of spanning from today through to the 13th. And then we move over to the East Coast, where we've got Hurricane Florence moving in, the potential for all the other scenarios that we've talked about. And then we move over to the UK around the 17th. Again, another possible connection to the UK in 17, I pointed out before, let me reload this, is the fact that we've got the number 17 on Obama's shoe when the apple rolls across to him and his foot is over the pound coin. I've interpreted that as possibly being 17. Let me bring it back a little bit more so you can see the 17. There we go. So interpreted that as possibly being 1 and 7. Even if it's an X, it could be an X and 7, that would still be 17. Possible connection to it being 17 foot underwater, because we have a tsunami wave in the same picture. But it could also be a reference to a date. 17, something happens, then 18, Hurricane Helen comes in. So we've got multiple scenarios to look out for, multiple locations to look out for. I'm up to the task. I'm doing as much as I can, fitting in, normal kind of life and trying to do these interpretations at the same time. So yeah, definitely looking out New Zealand, Hawaii, even on the chalkboard where we have the lettering. Let's bring it back. 1 second. Yeah, so even on the chalkboard where we have the lettering here, where this could be an R for 18 or a 12 or a 15 or even an N and Z for New Zealand, you've got the potential for this being an I, could represent Israel, or H, which could represent Hawaii, or T, which could represent Tokyo or Taiwan. Interestingly enough, on the 15th, which is one of the dates you can get from this, Taiwan is going to be experiencing hurricane or typhoon Mangkhut, which is going to be a strong category 5. So again, there's a lot of things going on that could relate to this video, and we're seeing a lot of events and news stories that do seem to be connecting to this video. Children behind barbed wire, Hurricane Florence, a reference to blooming from lotus flower, and that obviously being what Florence means. The potential for a nuclear winter with the nuclear reactors all along the east coast, at least 10 or 12 of them possibly being affected, depending on whether the trajectory of Hurricane Florence changes or not. So a lot to watch for. While New Zealand is waiting for the 8.1, they are preparing for the worst. Coordinated by the Joint Australian Tsunami Warning Centre, Packwave 18 simulated a tsunami impacting Australia's eastern states following a earthquake south of the Solomon Islands. When I said Packwave 18, my mind just went straight to the iPad video again, right over to this point here. Yesterday I noticed it, but I thought, it's it doesn't really kind of make much sense to me, so I'm not going to mention it. But now it does make a bit more sense to me, Packwave, and I'm going to show you in this video where they may have a reference to at least Pac. So let's put it back a little bit. There we go. Do you see him? Do you see him? Pac-Man right there, upside down. The eye, the mouth open, even eating a little bit of food. Obviously the round body. I don't know if that could be a reference to Packwave, but it definitely looks like, obviously we've got the yin yang symbol, possibly something else in there as well in terms of interpretation, but most definitely it's not hard at all to see Pac-Man right there, and we've got this Packwave situation going on, so it could all be connected. It's not just the United Kingdom and United States and Israel and Japan that we're looking out for, on Guam and the Marshall Islands. It's pretty much the whole world. Everyone's going to be involved. We've seen India in the iPad Gold video. We've seen Pakistan and Iran in the iPad Gold video. Pakistan represented by Osama bin Laden, at the same time representing Iran with the IRGC forces behind the figure of Osama bin Laden. Them also representing missiles, so we know that they're going to come out on the Straits of Hormuz. I believe that will be around or on the 15th, if this timeline is correct. There is obviously one more time period I'm thinking about, which I've mentioned a few times before, but trying to put my focus on this time frame because it does seem to be connecting more. Last thing I just wanted to add to this report is the fact that Moscow is claiming that there is filming already taking place for this staged chemical attack that the United States has warned Russia and Syria basically not to conduct, otherwise there'll be some extreme consequences. They're blaming the UK for manufacturing this chemical attack. Um, Again, that could be in Syria, Idlib, or it could be on our own soil. You know, false flag. Get the UK people behind war, because generally the UK population, we just don't support war in general. But you know, obviously, when it comes to a home attack, people's minds are altered in that respect, and vengeance becomes a key driver of why wars, particularly world wars, begin. Um, According to the data from the Idlib government's residents, currently the filming of a staged provocation of the alleged chemical weapons used by the Syrian army against civilians is underway in Ashuga. Let's say that right. Film crews from several Middle East TV channels and also a regional branch of a leading US news TV channel, arrived in Ashuga this morning for filming, the centre said. The scenario includes a staged video of providing assistance to the citizens, I'm not going to say the name again, and activists of the civil defense, the White Helmets, which we fund. After the alleged use of the so-called barrel bombs with toxic substances, the militants delivered 2 samples with a poisonous substance, including chlorine, this morning to ensure the filming looks natural, the centre said. The Russian military notes that all videos are to be sent to the editorial offices of TV channels for broadcast after they are posted in social networks. So this is quite a lot of detail in terms of um, the alleged chemical weapons attack that's seemingly underway and due to take place. They obviously need a reason to get into Syria. They're there already, but they need a reason to confront Russia and to confront Syria. So a staged chemical attack would bring about an even bigger response than we had on April the 13th when they last uh, fired Tomahawk cruise missiles into Syria. They didn't get much of a Russian response. In fact, Russia kind of stood back on that one. But this time they're not going to. So that has the potential to make it the scenario we've been talking about, World War III, spilling out from the Middle East into the rest of the world, while the rest of the world is trying to deal with earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, and hurricanes. So you guys keep your eyes open. Have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and may the Heavenly Father bless you.